What happens when a school bully lays hands on the quiet girl? Sometimes the quietest person in the room has the loudest story to tell. In 10 seconds, everything Jake thought he knew about Emma would change forever. This is that story, and it'll make you think twice about judging anyone. Emma Rodriguez walked through the halls of Lincoln High like a ghost. There, her but barely noticed. Her long brown hair fell like a curtain around her face, and that cream-colored cardigan she always wore seemed to make her blend into the beige brick walls. She'd perfected the art of invisibility over the past 3 years, head down, earbuds in, moving with purpose, but never too fast, never drawing attention. That was the key to surviving high school when you were different. But Jake Morrison had other plans. Well. His voice cut through the morning chatter like a knife. Look who decided to show her face today. Emma's stomach clenched. She could feel his presence before she even saw him. That particular brand of teenage arrogance that filled a room. Jake was everything she wasn't: loud, confident, surrounded by admirers who laughed at his every word. "I'm talking to you, Rodriguez," he called out, his sneakers squeaking against the polished floor as he approached. The hallway began to quiet. Other students slowed their pace, sensing drama brewing. Emma kept walking, her grip tightening on her worn backpack straps. She'd learned that acknowledging him only made things worse. "What's wrong? Cat got your tongue?" Jake's friends snickered behind him. "Or are you just too good to talk to us regular folks?" Emma reached her locker, number 247, third row from the top. Her fingers fumbled with the combination lock: 15 right, 22 left, 8 right. The same numbers she'd been turning for 3 years. Muscle memory keeping her steady even when her heart was racing. "You know what your problem is, Emma?" Jake's voice was closer now. She could smell his cologne, something expensive his parents probably bought him. "You think you're better than everyone else with that whole mysterious loner act." She pulled out her calculus textbook, her literature anthology, her notebook with the coffee stain on the cover from last Tuesday's incident in the cafeteria. "Everything in its place, everything organized, everything under control. My cousin went to your old school in Phoenix," Jake continued, and Emma's blood ran cold. "He told me some interesting stories about why you transferred here junior year." The hallway had gone completely silent now. Emma could feel dozens of eyes on her, waiting for a reaction, hungry for drama to break up the monotony of another Tuesday morning. She closed her locker softly. Never slam, never draw more attention than necessary, and turned to face Jake for the first time. He was taller than she remembered, his blonde hair perfectly tousled in that effortless way that probably took him 20 minutes every morning. "I don't want any trouble," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake's grin widened. "Trouble? Who said anything about trouble? I'm just trying to be friendly." He stepped closer, invading her personal space. "Maybe you could tell us all about Phoenix, about why you left so suddenly." Emma's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. To most people, she looked the same as always: small, quiet, harmless. But if anyone had been paying close attention, they might have noticed the subtle shift in her stance, the way her weight settled differently on her feet. "Please," she said, "just leave me alone." The bell rang, echoing off the brick walls and blue lockers. Students began moving toward their first period classes, but a small crowd lingered, sensing this wasn't over. Jake didn't move. "You know what? I don't think I will." For 3 months, Jake Morrison had made Emma Rodriguez's life a carefully orchestrated nightmare. It started: small knocked books, accidental shoulder bumps, loud comments about her clothes or her grades, the kind of behavior that adults would dismiss as typical teenage nonsense. But Emma knew better. She recognized the pattern because she'd seen it before. It was during lunch period when Jake first discovered her sitting alone in the far corner of the cafeteria, earbuds in, picking at a sandwich while reading. He'd walked over with his usual entourage: Tyler, Marcus, and Brad, all of them wearing Letterman jackets like armor. "What are you reading, bookworm?" he had asked, snatching the paperback from her hands. "Oh, look at this. The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Planning your own little war, are we?" Emma had reached for the book calmly. "It's from my philosophy elective. May I have it back, please?" "Philosophy." Jake had laughed, holding the book just out of reach. What kind of teenage girl reads war strategies for fun? The kind who's had to learn about conflict, whether she wanted to or not, Emma thought, but didn't say. Instead, she'd stood up, gathered her things, and walked away, leaving her lunch untouched. That had been Jake's first taste of her refusal to engage, and it had only made him more determined. The incidents escalated gradually, anonymous notes in her locker calling her weird and freak, her backpack mysteriously unzipped, spilling papers across the hallway floor, cruel posts on social media platforms that she didn't even use but that her few acquaintances would mention in hushed, sympathetic tones. Emma endured it all with the same quiet dignity that had become her trademark. She documented everything in a small notebook. Dates, times, witnesses, because her mother had taught her that information was power, and someday she might need that power. But Jake was getting bolder. Last week, he'd cornered her after chemistry class when the hallways were nearly empty. "You know what I think?" he'd said, blocking her path to the exit. "I think you're not as innocent as you pretend to be. I think you're hiding something big." Emma had kept her breathing steady, her expression neutral. "I'm not hiding anything. I just want to finish school and move on with my life." "See, that's what I'm talking about." Jake had stepped closer, close enough that she could see the pores on his nose, smell the mint gum he'd been chewing. "Most people our age are excited about senior year, about graduation parties and college plans. But you talk about school like it's a prison sentence you're trying to serve." He wasn't wrong, but Emma wasn't about to give him that satisfaction. "Maybe," Jake had continued, "I should do a little more digging into your past. Ask around Phoenix. See what secrets you left behind." That night, Emma had called her mother for the first time in weeks. "Mom," she'd said, her voice tight with worry, "someone's asking questions about Phoenix." "Oh, honey." Her mother had sighed. "We knew this might happen eventually." "Are you in danger?" "I don't know yet," Emma had admitted, "but he's persistent." "Remember what Sensei Martinez taught you," her mother had said softly. "The best fight is the one you never have to have. But if someone forces your hand—" "I know," Emma had whispered. "I remember." Now, standing in the hallway with Jake's eyes boring into her, Emma realized that all her careful avoidance, all her strategic invisibility, might not be enough anymore. Some fights, no matter how much you try to avoid them, eventually come looking for you. The confrontation that would change everything began like all the others, with Jake's voice cutting through the hallway noise during the break between third and fourth periods. "Hey, Phoenix," he called out, using the nickname he'd coined after learning about her transfer. "I've got some news for you." Emma was at her locker again, pulling out her American history textbook. She could see Jake approaching in the reflection of the small mirror she'd hung inside the metal door, a gift from her mother with "Stay Strong" etched in tiny letters along the bottom edge. Behind Jake came his usual followers, but today the group was bigger. Word had spread that something was brewing between Jake Morrison and the quiet girl, and in the ecosystem of high school drama, that was premium entertainment. "My cousin finally called me back," Jake announced loud enough for the gathering crowd to hear. "Turns out you were quite the celebrity at Desert Vista High before you disappeared." Emma's hand stilled on her textbook. She could feel her pulse quickening, but her breathing remained controlled, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Out through the mouth, just like she'd been taught. Apparently. Jake continued, moving closer with each word. There was this big incident your junior year. Something about you putting 3 football players in the hospital. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Emma heard someone whisper, "No way," and another voice say, "She doesn't look like she could hurt a fly." Emma closed her locker and turned to face him, her backpack secured on both shoulders. "That's not what happened," she said quietly. "Oh." Jake's eyebrows shot up in mock surprise. So something did happen. Finally, the Ice Queen speaks. The circle of students was growing, phones appearing in hands like digital vultures waiting to capture whatever came next. Emma could see teachers at the far end of the hallway, but they were dealing with their own classroom preparations, oblivious to the tension building near the lockers. "It's not what you think," Emma said, her voice still calm, but carrying an edge that made a few students lean forward to hear better. "Then why don't you enlighten us?" Jake stepped directly into her personal space now, so close she had to tilt her head back slightly to maintain eye contact. "Tell us all about how little Emma Rodriguez sent 3 guys to the emergency room." "Step back, please," Emma said. "Or what?" Jake laughed, and his friends joined in. "You going to put me in the hospital too?" Emma's jaw tightened. "I'm asking nicely. Please step back." "You know what I think?" Jake reached out and poked her shoulder with his index finger. "I think you're all talk. I think whatever happened in Phoenix was just a lucky." He poked her again, harder this time. "Accident, and you've been riding that reputation ever since." Another poke, this one hard enough to make her take a half step backward. "I think," Jake said, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper that only Emma and the closest bystanders could hear, "you're nothing but a scared little girl playing dress up in someone else's story." This time, instead of poking, he placed his palm flat against her shoulder and pushed. It wasn't hard enough to knock her down, but it was deliberate, aggressive, and unmistakably crossing the line from verbal harassment into physical assault. The hallway went dead silent. Emma looked down at his hand on her shoulder, then back up at his face. For the first time since arriving at Lincoln High, her carefully maintained mask of passive acceptance began to crack. "You have 3 seconds to remove your hand," she said, her voice carrying a steel that no one in that hallway had ever heard before. Jake's grin widened. "Or what, Phoenix?" "2," Emma said. "This should be good." Jake laughed, pressing his hand more firmly against her shoulder. 1. What happened next took exactly 10 seconds, but those 10 seconds would be dissected and replayed in the minds of everyone present for years to come. Jake Morrison had spent his entire high school career as the apex predator, the guy who could intimidate anyone into submission with nothing more than his reputation and his willingness to push boundaries others wouldn't cross. He had never encountered anyone like Emma Rodriguez in the space between 1 and what should have been 0. Several things happened simultaneously. Emma's weight shifted almost imperceptibly to her back foot. Her breathing deepened. Her eyes, those quiet brown eyes that had spent 3 years avoiding direct contact, locked onto Jake's with an intensity that made him falter for just a moment. "Time's up," she said softly. Jake, committed to his performance in front of the crowd, pushed harder against her shoulder. "What are you going to do about?" He never finished the sentence. Emma's left hand came up and caught his wrist, her fingers wrapping around it with surprising strength. Her right hand moved to his elbow, and in one fluid motion that seemed to defy physics, Jake Morrison, all 6 feet and 180 pounds of him, was suddenly airborne. The throw was textbook perfect. Jake's feet left the ground, his body rotated through the air, and he landed hard on his back against the polished linoleum floor with a sound that echoed off the brick walls like a thunderclap. The entire sequence took maybe 3 seconds. For a moment, the hallway was frozen in absolute silence. Jake lay on the floor, staring up at the fluorescent lights, trying to process what had just happened to him. Emma stood exactly where she'd been before, her backpack still on her shoulders, her expression completely calm. Then the chaos erupted. "Holy crap!" someone shouted. "Did you see that? Oh my God, did she just? Is he okay?" Phones appeared everywhere, students scrambling to capture the aftermath of what they'd just witnessed. Jake slowly sat up, his face red with embarrassment and anger, his carefully styled hair now disheveled. "You crazy," he started to say, scrambling to his feet. "I asked you to step back," Emma said quietly, her voice cutting through the noise. "I asked you nicely 3 times. Jake looked around at the crowd, at the phones pointed in his direction, at his friends who were staring at him with expressions ranging from shock to barely contained laughter. He'd been humiliated by the quietest girl in school, and everyone had seen it. "This isn't over," he said, trying to salvage what was left of his reputation. Emma adjusted her backpack straps and looked him directly in the eye. "Yes, it is." There was something in her tone, not a threat, not anger, just a simple statement of fact, that made Jake take an involuntary step backward. "Where did you learn to do that?" someone called out from the crowd. Emma turned toward the voice. It was Sarah Chen, a girl from her calculus class who'd never spoken to her before. "My mother enrolled me in martial arts when I was 7, Emma said simply. "She thought it would be good for my discipline and confidence." "Have you been training this whole time?" another voice asked. "Every day for 11 years, Emma replied. "But I've never wanted to use it. I've spent 3 years trying to avoid any situation where I might have to." She looked back at Jake, who was now surrounded by his friends, but somehow looked smaller than he had 5 minutes ago. "I really just wanted to finish school in peace," she said, and there was genuine sadness in her voice. "I never wanted to hurt anyone." As word spread through Lincoln High like wildfire, the story of what happened in the hallway began to take on a life of its own. But the real story, the one that explained everything about Emma Rodriguez, was far more complicated than anyone could have guessed. By lunch period, Emma found herself surrounded by curious classmates for the first time in 3 years. They wanted to know about her training, about Phoenix, about why she'd kept her abilities secret for so long. "It's not a secret," Emma explained to the small group that had gathered around her usual corner table. "I just never saw any reason to advertise it." Marcus Williams, who'd been one of Jake's closest friends until this morning, looked genuinely confused. "But if you could defend yourself the whole time, why did you let him pick on you?" Emma set down her sandwich and considered the question carefully. "Because fighting should always be the last resort, not the first. My sensei taught me that the strongest person in the room is often the one who chooses not to fight." "But he was making your life miserable," said Sarah Chen. "He was," Emma agreed. "But I was hoping he'd eventually get bored and move on to someone else. I know that sounds selfish, but I really thought I could just wait it out until graduation." "What changed your mind today?" This question came from Tyler, another former member of Jake's group. Emma was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. "He crossed a line. When someone puts their hands on you without permission, that's assault. And when they do it in front of a crowd to humiliate you, that's not just bullying anymore. That's abuse." The weight of that word, abuse, settled over the table like a heavy blanket. "Is that what happened in Phoenix?" Sarah asked gently. Emma nodded slowly. "There were 3 seniors who thought it would be funny to corner me after school one day. They didn't just want to embarrass me. They wanted to hurt me. Really hurt me." She took a sip of water, gathering her thoughts. "I tried everything else first. I reported them to the administration, but they were star athletes, and I was just some weird martial arts kid. I tried avoiding them, changing my routine, even hiding in the library until my mom could pick me up. But they found you anyway." Marcus said quietly. They found me anyway, Emma confirmed. And when they did, they made it clear that they weren't going to stop, so I made sure they couldn't continue. You really sent 3 guys to the hospital? Tyler asked, his voice a mixture of awe and concern. 1 dislocated shoulder, 1 broken wrist, 1 concussion from hitting the ground too hard. Emma recited matter-of-factly. The police investigated and determined it was self-defense. The school administration, however, decided it would be better for everyone if I finished my education elsewhere. That's not fair, Sarah said angrily. No, it wasn't, Emma agreed. But my mom and I decided that sometimes starting over in a new place is better than fighting a system that doesn't want to change. We thought Lincoln High would be different. And then Jake happened, Marcus said. And then Jake happened, Emma echoed. I was hoping I could just fly under the radar for 2 more years, graduate quietly, go to college, leave all this behind. Tyler looked uncomfortable. We should have said something. We all knew what Jake was doing to you wasn't right. Why didn't you? Emma asked, not accusingly, but with genuine curiosity. Tyler and Marcus exchanged glances. Because he was our friend, Tyler admitted. And because it was easier to go along with it than to stand up to him. Emma nodded. I understand that. Standing up to someone who has power over your social life is scary. But now you know what happens when good people stay silent while bad things happen to others. The aftermath of the hallway incident rippled through Lincoln High in ways that surprised everyone, especially Emma Rodriguez. Jake Morrison, for his part, seemed to disappear into himself. Gunn was the loud, swaggering bully who had dominated social interactions for years. He attended classes, ate lunch alone, and avoided eye contact with pretty much everyone. The video of him being thrown by the quiet girl had already made its way to social media, despite the school's best efforts to confiscate phones. On Wednesday, 2 days after the incident, Jake approached Emma at her locker. I owe you an apology, he said quietly, his usual entourage nowhere to be seen. Emma closed her locker and looked at him carefully. There was something different about his posture, his expression. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like humility. I've been thinking about what you said, Jake continued, about crossing lines, about assault. He swallowed hard. I never thought of it that way before, but you were right. What I did was wrong. Emma studied his face. Why? She asked simply. Why what? Why did you target me? From the very beginning, before you knew anything about my past, you decided I was someone you could pick on. Why? Jake was quiet for a long moment. Because you were different. Because you didn't fight back. Because... He paused, struggling with the words. Because picking on someone smaller made me feel bigger. And how do you feel now? Emma asked. Small, Jake admitted. Really, really small. Over the following weeks, something remarkable began to happen at Lincoln High. The incident had sparked conversations about bullying, about bystander responsibility, about the difference between strength and power. Teachers noticed a shift in classroom dynamics. Students who had previously stayed silent when witnessing harassment began speaking up. Emma found herself in an unexpected position, not as the quiet girl hiding in the corners, but as someone other students looked to for guidance. She started eating lunch with Sarah, Marcus, Tyler, and a growing group of students who wanted to create a different kind of school environment. As for Jake, his transformation was perhaps the most surprising of all. He began volunteering with the school's peer mediation program, helping to resolve conflicts before they escalated. He publicly apologized not just to Emma, but to several other students he had bullied over the years. You know what I learned? Jake said during a school assembly on anti-bullying awareness. I learned that being strong isn't about making other people feel weak. Real strength is using your power to protect people, not hurt them. From her seat in the back of the auditorium, Emma Rodriguez, no longer quite so quiet, no longer quite so invisible, smiled and applauded along with everyone else. Sometimes the best lessons come from the most unexpected teachers. What would you have done in Emma's situation? Have you ever witnessed bullying and stayed silent? Sometimes the people around us are fighting battles we know nothing about, carrying strength we can't see, waiting for just one person to stand up and say, "This isn't right." If this story made you think, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Share a moment when someone surprised you with their hidden strength, or when you found the courage to stand up for what's right. Remember, real strength isn't about fighting. It's about choosing when not to fight and knowing when you have no choice but to.